I'm Robert Lundahl, filmmaker and storyteller. I stand up for human rights and the environment. Welcome to Creative Frontline.
And here, another touch of nature's magic. Here in the desert, a sea called Salton Sea. Landlocked, rich in beauty and allure, 35 miles long, 10 to 16 miles wide, its maximum depth, 40 feet. The Salton Sea, sportsman's paradise, the new recreational capital of the world, attracting tremendous numbers of water skiers and boaters, and just plain people.
Manuel Pastor, PhD, USC.
In the Salton Sea region, specifically Imperial County, there's enough lithium to redo the entire American auto fleet to electric and still have 100 million batteries left over. Perhaps just as attractive is that the method of extracting lithium in the Salton Sea region has the potential or promise to be the cleanest, greenest method that has ever been developed. There's a lot of interest in this by corporations, but then also by environmentalists. And the question is, will it also deliver benefits for local communities that have been impoverished for years? You've got a place that's traditionally had a lot of labor exploitation in agriculture. That's 85% Latino, but where there's very limited Latino political power decision-making.
California, whistle stop.
Governor Newsom's vision is that California becomes a global leader in sustainably co-producing lithium and renewable electricity from geothermal power plants. Federal, state, and local agencies are teaming up with industry in pursuit of the vision.
Luis Olmedo, Comité Cívico del Valle.
We're in a position of, I would say, in a position of power like we've never been before. And I think my hope is that we're able to create a better blueprint as to how to extract these minerals, because one thing we want, and one thing's for certain, we need to reduce greenhouse gases, carbon from our atmosphere, because we are in a self-destructive mode right now.
Beauty and fun in all its phases. Salton City. Salton City is also a story of the greatest of all investments in the future. No undertow, no perilous sea life.
As a member of the North Shore Beach Yacht Club, you will have this $300,000 clubhouse and this beautiful 400-boat marina at your disposal. This temporary landing strip will soon be replaced by a skyport adjacent to the clubhouse. The lavishly furnished clubhouse is completely equipped for a variety of social and recreational activities.
California's desert regions have a long history of get-rich-quick schemes, development disasters, and ceaseless promotional efforts. Poorly laid plans are often not founded on solid ground. Once the impermanent Salton Sea was touted as America's latest and best vacation and lifestyle paradise. Today, lithium production captures the imagination of hungry investors. There's no question the intentions are good, but what about the downsides?
Because this is untested technology, right? It's never been done. So do we have a year's worth of lithium, or 2 years, or 5 years? And then if it starts to run thin, do we then have a market incentive to say, let's drill deeper, farther, faster over this fault, this seismic fault? So can you address those issues and how you look at that in the planning going forward, how you plan to approach those kinds of questions?
I think we have to be very diligent in how we do this. One is we have to make sure that the type of science that is used, that is helping us solve those problems and respond to those questions in a way that was usable and translatable and implementable. I'll give you an example. As the Salton Sea, a lot of times we refer to it, it's been studied to death. We don't want to study this new industry to death. We want to make sure that if there's limited pool of dollars, right? And researchers are always going to be, in the pressures of publish or perish. And so, yeah, we have to be we have to be very diligent and make sure that our communities aren't just being mined for information, but that we have a coordinated approach as to what are those questions that we need answers. And you brought up some of them.
And another kind of water has been added to the desert that was never planned, never dreamed of. Recreation water, the vast Salton Sea. 385 square miles of water formed by accident back in 1905 when the Colorado River ran wild over man-made dikes. A sea in the desert with its wide sandy beaches, no tides or dangerous undercurrents.
You know, how long is this resource there and sustainable? How much quantity? These are questions that I can point to, like one agency that is actually, one entity that is looking at that, and that's the Berkeley Lab. I know they're working on that. I've seen University of Riverside very eager to go out and try to answer some of these questions. You know, there's actually, because very few times do we get opportunities in this corner of the country, of the state. We want to make sure that also our local academic institutions are also helping answer some of those questions. Why? Because it's not going to be the only time we're going to need that type of capacity.
Sean Milanovich, Kahia.
The Salton Sea is a water body that has come and gone for thousands and thousands of years. And sometimes there is a small body of water. Sometimes there is no water there.
We know that these minerals, that some of them are more difficult to extract. We know that lithium, as far as we've heard from the industry, we've heard from researchers, it is a science. You know, it's not like you're just trying to separate gold or these hard metals from an ore. They got to take it from a liquid to a solid and then to a liquid, and it's very interesting. But I think a lot of this information, at least from the industry side, much of it is being characterized as intellectual property. Now that's where we're going to have some trouble, I think.
The Kuya, in our oral stories, we have it collected that we remember that there was 3 events, and these events were really great and big, that the water came 3 times. And so when it came with a thunder. It came rolling. You could hear it for miles and miles away. And so the people had lived at the base of the mountain where all the springs were located. But the people that were out in the valley, they would have not had made it.
The communities have a right to be informed. We need to be informed as to what chemicals are being utilized and what kind of risk are there to release those chemicals into the air, into the water, into our land, that are going to have a harm into our environment, our entire ecosystem, including human health.
And with literally millions of fish ready for the taking.
I'm very confident that the industry is making lots of progress, and some of them are talking about maybe as early as 2 years that they've already been ready to go, sort of full scale market.
Our Seaview Elementary School is one of the most modern in Southern California. A branch of Bank of America. Thousands of Californians and persons from all over the country already own property here. and homes are beginning to dot the land.
We're trying to convince the federal government, where they have the sort of the larger resources to be able to invest in this industry. I know the state is certainly convinced. You don't have to convince the state, because the state wants this. It's really about the federal government, and the federal government a lot of times is making decisions, not really looking at the opportunity here in our own community. But some of the things, and even though I'm not going to be able to answer you the questions that you raised, those are important questions that we're waiting for right now. My name is Luis Olmedo. I am the executive director of Comité Cívico del Valle.
Salton Sea is right now, it sits between a couple mountain ranges. On the south side, you have the San Jacinto and Santa Rosa Mountains, and on the north side, you have the what is it? The Chuckwalla Mountains, the Chocolate Mountains, Orocopia Mountains, and the Salton Sea is right in the center.
Here, too, you can view one of Southern California's most popular PGA-sponsored pro-amateur golf tournaments. The Salton City Golf Course is one of the desert's more picturesque. It is 160 acres of wide, all-grass fairways and velvet smooth greens. It truly deserves the honor of being the greenest gem on the desert, nestled between the Salton Sea and the Santa Rosa Mountains. Among the nation's finest professional golfers have competed in the Salton City Pro-Am: Julius Boris, Al Geiberger, Bruce Devlin, Mike Sutchak, Bobby Nichols, as well as celebrities from the entertainment world.
Well, let me ask you a question about Imperial County, because as we were talking earlier, the Salton Sea has numerous issues with agricultural pesticides running in there and other chemicals as well.
As an organization, we consider ourselves an environmental justice organization. So we see it from that lens, as well as the fact that we're an organization that was founded by farm workers in the Imperial Valley. This has been our home for the last 35 years. I've been with the organization for 23 years. So I grew up in Imperial Valley, and I've seen the Imperial Valley from being out with my parents, working the fields, and I would say just kind of going through life in the years. And a lot of times we can be very sort of involved in our own sort of day-to-day and not necessarily be seeing air pollution or toxics or where we live and the conditions we live. A lot of times we ignore all of that.
In an article appearing in the Los Angeles Times, April 17, 1966, Salton City was chosen by a group of planners, architects, administrative officers, politicians, professors, and associated thinkers as one of the 24 major cities in Southern California in the year 2000.
As someone who's lived here, when I came into Comité Cívico del Valle, and this was around 2000, my whole world changed. Everything that was part of the landscape and was normal suddenly was no longer normal. And so some of the early things that I got involved with was around the things then that the blinders go off and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that agricultural burning was a big deal. We see it all the time. We smell it all the time. And it was actually people from, good friends from state departments of public health or the Cali PA or the US EPA, as our network was already there when I got here. A lot of them started kind of pointing things that I was really unaware. And I still remember sitting down with some of some folks that worked at the state at the time, and then it's ag burning season, and so they saw a whole bunch of mushroom clouds with smoke, and it's like, what's going on? Is everything okay? Like, what are all these fires? And I just looked back and I was like, it's ag burning. What are you talking about? Oh, but they were so alarmed, and it was a real reality check for me when I saw their face and their reaction to it.
Over time, as the water moved underneath from the Colorado River to the Salton Sea, there's a water connection right there. And we believe as Native people that all these water bodies are all connected. spiritually through the underground spiritual highway. And so you can go in one water body and come out in another water body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, Robert. But we have these stories about the water coming and going, and that's extremely important. But also around the Salton Sea, the the fresh water brought fish, and so when the when that water would stay, it stayed for a really long time. Even though it came real fast, the water would stay a really, really long time. We're talking hundreds of years. And so when all that fresh water came in, brought in all kinds of fish, and those fish started breeding themselves. So we collected the fish using nets, using boats. We went to the sea to gather salt when it was just a dry lake bed. And we call this area Ingelyipa, salt flats.
Since then, obviously, as we took a deeper dive into our environment, we realized like we don't have the best water quality. We're living next to contaminated and sometimes even Superfund sites that we didn't even know were in our own neighborhood. Air pollution, again, sort of became part of our language. We got so involved that we started going out there and connecting to others. I'll tell you, we weren't born with this knowledge. We import a lot of knowledge too, because there's other communities that have done this already. So in the environmental justice, we try to exchange and ideas and best practices. And so we started going out there measuring the air, and we started measuring the trucks, how many axles, and we started measuring different parts of the community, like which is the cleaner community, which is the most impacted community. We started getting into understanding the Cleaner Act. We got it to a point where we realized that we kept persistently failing to meet federal standards. These are protections that we as residents, citizens, people who live in this community, we have those protections. And so, in 2010, we actually had to file a lawsuit against the federal government because they were failing to enforce and afford us those protections. And again, 23 years later, I wouldn't say we're necessarily scientists or researchers or experts, but we've been able to build a good team that have brought that expertise and that are working either within our own organization or working contracted. And so we've really built a huge arsenal of expertise to what it is today.
Also, there's at the southeast side of the Salton Sea, there was 3 dome volcanoes. And these volcanoes, last time that they erupted was over 8,000 years ago. And that's why we have a Obsidian Butte, we have Red Hill, and then there's Mullet Island. And these are all volcanoes. And not many people know that this area know that there was volcanoes. But when we hear about geothermal plants harvesting the energy that's deep below the ground, it makes sense in a way. That makes a relationship right there where people can understand that. But for us as Kuya people, we have stories connected to these volcanoes. There's one about the Puish, the Roadrunner, and so the Kuya sent out the Roadrunner to go get the first fire, and nobody wanted to do it. Nobody wanted to cross that water body. Everyone was scared, and it was a long ways away. But they sent Roadrunner out that way, and he once he climbed up to the top of the volcano there, he took an ember, put it in the back right here, and just held it right there. And so then he swam back over the water and carried back that ember. And so that's for the first fire. And this was a story that I had heard about from my cousin Snapper over at Torres Martinez just the other day. And he had talked about how the Roadrunner went to went to another volcano over the on the other into Arizona. But there's also the story about how the Mojave people, how they went to Amboy Crater and how they got fire from there.
Most of the successful geothermal projects around the world are located at plate boundaries where the hot magma is shallow and there are a lot of natural earthquakes. One of the potential hazards for geothermal operations in the Imperial Valley are induced earthquakes. Recent studies have concluded that a large earthquake that hit South Korea was caused by geothermal operations. Geophysics researchers at places like Stanford University have determined that in some situations, injection operations can induce earthquakes. In Texas and Oklahoma, it has become well known that injection of produced water associated with oil operations has led to a large increase in earthquakes.
We want to make sure that we have more say, more participation in the visioning, in the structure at all levels, from the economics, the jobs, the community benefits, and the profit sharing, the taxes and the way that they get distributed. We have an opportunity of a lifetime here. A lot of times when environmental justice is discussed, there's always this feeling of, oh, they're here to kill projects. And that is the wrong characterization of environmental justice. Our goal is to be able to create and to be able to facilitate, to the extent that we can, a well-balanced economy, a sustainable economy. We don't want too much in any direction. We want to make sure that all parties and all stakeholders are represented, because environmental justice means economic justice. It means jobs justice. It means community benefits justice. All these things that, let me compare it in this way. Everything that is good for a well-established, beautiful communities, and there are many in this country, beautiful communities where they have beautiful landscapes, they have the best education, they have the best tourist attractions, they have the best jobs, they have everything. That's the American dream. And so we shouldn't be then characterized as like, oh, they're anti this or they're anti that. No, we're for everything that is the American dream, but we are not for hoarding dollars for one special interest or eliminating opportunities and assigning harm to disadvantaged, low income, or disengaged, communities that have barriers in participation. We're not going to be okay with that, because we wouldn't be okay with that for others who participate and have political influence and access. We want the American dream, and the American dream is for everyone. There are going to be waste streams that exist right now just with geothermal. With geothermal, you have 3 classifications of waste, and that's one is it's either hazardous, it's below the hazardous level threshold, or sometimes depending on the mixture of minerals. You got some, not toxic minerals, you have some very toxic minerals, and you end up with radioactive material that at times, they have to push the emergency button and get all the cleanup crews in to handle that hazardous waste. What some of the experts are telling us is that if they'd say like in an average a day, there's like 20 tons of hazardous materials, that when and that hazardous material might be hazardous, might not. When you go through the lithium processing, 100% of the material is going to be toxic. And it's going to be a minimum of 10 times that size. So in a scenario where you have 20 tons of hazardous materials, well, now you're going to have 200 tons of hazardous materials. And so we want to make sure that part of what we're advocating and finding ways to create standards that California has, that the United States has, that are managing the waste cradle to the extent possible. It would be the dream that 100% would be recyclable and manageable. That has to be our goal. We have considerable concerns. We are the perfect candidate to end up with the harm. We're the perfect candidate. You know, we have a community that is considerably ill in comparison to the rest of the state, have people with respiratory problems. When COVID hit, per capita, we had the largest amounts of death and permanent, harm. We also have large unemployment, poverty. It's just all the characteristics of, this is the worst possible conditions. And so we're the perfect candidate as to where companies can really take advantage of. And I would even say that even government can really take advantage of us. Why? Because our expectations are less than, let's say you go to Beverly Hills, or you go to Palm Springs, which is our neighbor to the northwest. I've been out there, and I've never even seen a fast food place, where you go like drive through, we are taking extra precautions to make sure that we don't end up with the harm, but that we create policies and that we hold those policies to the higher standards so that we end up with the best possible outcome.
I'm Robert Lundahl. I stand up for human rights and the environment.